All right, guys, we put Susan in, but that didn't work. But Jim did work as we had context awareness. And then that launched our nice survey that we have for our production. And our survey has several branches in it. And those branches include skip patterns as well as loopback logic. And those two features are critical not only for doing surveys, but for doing any kind of staff training logic, or if you want to do dynamic decision support or anything like that, you have to have those kinds of features in your system. And on top of that, this can be entirely programmed by somebody without touching a line of code once the ADI framework has been implemented in your system. Imagine being able to leverage the power of knowledge harvesting so that your senior users, your super domain experts, could program and maintain their own surveys or training or whatever it is. That is the ADI framework. I'm your host, Sean MacKenzie. Thank you for joining me once again on my channel on data engineering. In this episode, we go back to our Application Domain Intelligence playlist with Microsoft Access, and we're going to build a simple survey. Now, I got ChatGPT to make me a simple survey with yes or no questions and some follow-up and skip logic and loopback logic, things that you would typically see in a survey, which is one of the things that ADI can do. The other thing being, things like decision support and things like that, and also staff training and all kinds of other things. But a simple survey is a good place to start. And so we're going to take this simple survey with 16 questions that has some skip patterns in it and loopbacks, and we're going to build that with the form that we made in our last episode. If you haven't watched that yet, make sure you go back and check that one out. We're going to build this and then we're going to execute it and watch it fly. It's going to be awesome. Let's get to it. Interested in the files used in these videos? Make sure to check out my downloads page. The link is in the description. Okay guys, so we're starting out our journey today with the same file that we've been using in the past few episodes, but we do make a couple of adjustments to it today, very small ones. They're not related to the programming of the survey. And there is our condition table and our prompt table, which we had episodes for each of those, as well as an episode for the action table. And so make sure you go back and watch those. And then we had one big episode on the ADI node, which brings it all together. And then, of course, the ADI set, which is kind of like saying context. And so we captured our answers in the answer table, but we have a production table here, which is not related to ADI. We are pretending we're in Candy right now, Candy manufacturer. There is our ADI module, and we have an ADI custom module, which is dedicated to ADI functions that will be specific to your system. And of course, we have our shift form, which is the one that we made. That is more for creating a context for the system to use. And then we had our ADI set form, which sort of has all of the different records organized here. This is not a particularly pretty form, but it is functional, and that is as far as we got last time. And it allows us to navigate into our tree by double-clicking on the pass or fail nodes and clicking go to start. If we want to go all the way to the start of a particular context, we can click down into it. We can also go back a step, which is dynamic, unlike a decision tree, for example. There could be many nodes that point to a particular node, and so that makes this more of a network than a tree. And you can see that is how the ADI set form works. So the set is the context. All of the nodes are in there that you can work away on the nodes, and then each node has prompts and actions attached to it, and it all uses conditions to evaluate expressions using dynamic programming, which is another feature of the ADI framework that is probably new to most of you, and unlike anything you've probably seen here on YouTube. Okay, so I double-clicked our shift form and I opened it. You can see it only has one button on it right now, and that is the button that we created in the previous episodes just to demonstrate the ADI framework in action. You can see that it does launch some context awareness. It knows if Jim is logged in or not, and it is able to kick off things like batches or run procedures And it's also capable of doing loopback logic like you see here. And so these are more advanced features in terms of what you'd like to see and be able to use for something like a survey with skip patterns or with loopback logic or things like that, combined with the context awareness or the ability to evaluate expressions as we showed in previous episodes. That makes it super powerful. So I've opened our shift form here, and all I'm doing is I cut and paste our start shift button, and I'm going to give our new button some new features here, and I'm going to call it our survey button. And what we can do with our survey, this is really just to implement the ADI framework in our system. So I'm going to go ahead here. I went to the properties for this button and I just called it CMD survey. We're going to pretend this is some button in our application, and we are going to have an on-click event for that button. Now you might already have other logic that runs in your click event for that button, and you can leave that logic there. In the case of the ADI framework, it just has to be the first line that's in there. Now you can see in the shift start we have do nodes and then number 1, and that's for context number 1 in the ADI set table. So that's the ID 1 in that table for ADI set. That executes whenever we hit the shift start button. So you can see now we're going to have a new context, and so we're going to make a new record in the ADI set table, and we kind of already know that that's going to be number 2 in this case. It won't be in every case, but we know because we're about to go and add that to our table, and number 1 is already taken and it's an auto number, so we know it's going to be number 2. So there we go. We're going to put our do nodes and context 2 in there, and that's going to kick that off. And then all the rest of your code you can put on under that line, and you can create your procedure just how you would normally. And so we're just inserting this line here so that it will check to see if this survey will run, and that logic is all encapsulated within the ADI framework that we're going to be building, or the ADI context with nodes that we're going to build here. And so once we've got that in there, we can close our shift form for now, and what we'll do is we're going to go ahead, we're going to open our ADI set form, and now we can sort of take a look at what's going on here. So we have our number 1 context, which is check Jim's login, and if it's Jim's login, then some batch processes run just like we showed at the beginning of this episode, and that's exactly what we want to see. So we've got 1 record in that ADI set table. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close that form just to show you. So I'm going to open the ADI set table, and you can see there it is. That's our first set of nodes, and that is number 1, and it kicks off with node number 1. And so that's how we can tell where or which node, on which node any of these sets start their processing. And so that's all I really wanted to show you there, that the ADI set table has 1 record for that set of nodes, which makes up a context, and you can specify the starting node in that table, and that's exactly what we want to see there. Next, what we'll do is we can start our ADI set form again, and we can go ahead and create a new set. So this is the one that's already there. We're going to go to this parent form, and we're going to click that new button. Now you'll notice that the rest of the form does not refresh, and that's because we are not doing the parent-child or master-child relationship between the set form and the nodes form. There's an important reason for that, and that's why we have the go to start button, because we are just showing that we have a set here that we can scroll to. There's our nodes. You can see we've got a bunch of nodes there, and we've got a new set created, and we're going to connect that set to the starting node after we build the starting node. And we're going to build a whole bunch of other nodes, but we're only going to record the starting node on the set form. So this gives us the ability to sort of cruise around inside of our decision network as we have here, and we can give our supervisor survey start. We're going to give it a little context awareness. We're going to say it's going to check that Jim is signing in again. So it could be anyone, it could be some other, could be a security group or something, but we'll just say Jim. And so in this case, that's what the starting condition is in the starting node. And so now we have a node that checks to see if Jim's logged in, and if Jim's not logged in, it won't do anything. But if it is, we're going to do this survey. Now look at this notepad document. Got this survey from ChatGPT after I did a couple of queries in there, and it gave me this nice little survey with skip patterns and loopback logic in it. And so this is something that would be very difficult to do in, say, a decision tree. And so this is a very simple survey. This is actually a very simple survey. We are doing a very simple example today, but this is something that would actually be very difficult to program, not just using a decision tree or something like that, but also just using regular logic, because in some cases where you have loopbacks and things like that, it's actually very hard to capture that in normal program flow, say with Visual Basic. You can do it up to a certain point, but then after that it gets very, very difficult to maintain, and that's when you start to need to have a table-based solution, which is what we're doing here. Okay, so taking a look at our first question that we had there, that was question number 1, which is, do you supervise the production of candy, I think it was, or something like that. And so what we're going to do for this question, I'm going to make this very simple today. We're going to do we're just going to say true on this one. So what this node is going to do is it's only going to go down the true branch, and that means that it's going to check for prompts and actions. And indeed on this node we do want to make a prompt. We want to ask that yes no question that was in the survey there, so we'll choose yes no for our prompt type. We'll set that to prompt order 1, and then we'll give it a caption. We'll say supervisor check, and then we'll paste in that question for the first question from the ChatGPT generated survey there. And so are you responsible for this stuff? That's going to be the text in the pop-up message, and we are going to capture the response to that in our answer table. That's part of the ADI framework, so we don't have to really do anything more here. So this node is just going to go down the true branch, and that's it. And then you can see here it says if they answer yes, then we're going to proceed to question 3, and if no, the survey might not be applicable. And so we'll copy that text of the second question, which is the one that gets skipped, and the second sort of query or prompt is about your responsibilities. So we created a new node for this, and let's copy that text. Please specify your role and responsibilities for the candy manufacturing, and that's an open-ended question. And so we're gonna, again for this one, we'll choose the true condition. It's just gonna blast through there, and it's gonna use the programming that's on the true side, and that's going to be an input box. We'll put that as prompt order number 1, and then we can put the responsibilities as a caption and paste in the text for that, and that will probably do it for this question. So you can see we've created our input box, and we've got 2 nodes, and you'll start to see the pattern of creation here once we get going. So we're actually not linking anything yet. We're creating a few questions, and we can link them here in a moment. Next, let's go back to our notepad that has the ChatGPT generated survey, and there's the third question. Do you follow standardized production procedures? And that is a yes/no question. And so we'll minimize that. So now we need a node, so we'll create a new node. We'll go new blank record, and we'll create a name for that. That's going to be for us. We'll call it 3. Do you use standardized procedures? And that should do it for the name. And just like for the other 2, we'll choose the true outcome in this case. we'll just choose that condition. So it's going to go through. We know what this node is. It's very easy to understand. It's a node that just asks a question. And so we're going to ask that question. We'll put that question in order, and we can put standardized procedures on here, and we can paste in the question text from our survey. And so there you go. We've got 3 nodes now. We've got at least three display nodes. This one's a yes, no, and that's what we want to see. After that, we can go ahead and create another new node. We'll click that new record in the nodes there, and we'll call this one 1D. Now this is going to be related to the first question, and this is going to be a decision node. Now sometimes you can integrate the decision into the original node, but for today I split it out. So we're going to have one node that makes a decision. It checks to see if the last answer was yes. And so that means that we can run this node right after we've asked the question in the very first step. And so that's going to give us, yes, no, it was yes. And so then we can do some logic to, decide where it's going to go. And so, those don't look very good. Okay, so let's go and do a little design work here first. I'm going to expand that list so that it's a little more readable. I think that would be a nice thing to put in there. So let's go do that. We'll go to our design view, and let's see here. I'll minimize that guy, and let's choose our drop-down lists. Those 2 that are right there. I'm actually doing the design in the subform on the main form here. This is a very quick way of doing it, but we're going to look at the properties for those, and I'm going to set the list width to 5 centimeters. If you're using different measurement, you can use different measurement. If you're using inches, you can use inches there, and that's going to give us a nice expanded list there for the pass and fail node ID. Now those 3 combo boxes, we actually want to add something here as well. We want to add a button that's going to refresh those. Now that is very important because, as you can see, as we are starting to build our nodes, you can tell that down the road we're going to need to use the node that we just created in order to link it to another node in the list as we're building. So let's do that. Let's grab a button there. I just called it refresh lists. We'll call it CMD refresh, and all we're going to do in this button, we're going to have a click event. We'll click on the ellipsis there, go to the code builder just as usual, and all we're going to do is requery those 3 combo boxes so that whenever we need to, we can refresh that to get the latest nodes that we just put in, because we're building a network. So every time we build a new node further down the line, we need to add it to our directory of nodes that we can choose from in those drop-down lists. And that will be a very simple little addition to our creator form here, our ADI set form with the subforms in it. This is the node subform. And what we'll do is we'll say requery those 3, the condition ID, pass node, and fail node ID. We're just going to requery those, and that's going to give us a nice ability. Each time that we add a new node, you can see that node become available in the pass node dropdown or the fail node dropdown. And so here we go. Those are the nodes that we've created already, and we've created those so I can click the refresh button whenever I want, and I can get the new nodes in there. But what we're going to do is we're going to navigate to our second context, our second ADI set there, and then now we can assign the starting node. So we can go ahead and choose that. There's our set form. It's the Candy Supervisor Survey. So now we're working on that, and we're going to set the very starting node for this particular set for the context. And that's going to be the Supervisor Survey Start. And now I can click Go to Start, and it'll take me right to that node so I can start building. And in this way you can have, 2 contexts or 10 contexts or 100 contexts, and you can work on those all in one form, and that's exactly what we want to see there. And so for this first node, I'm going to choose the first destination, which is the question number 1. The fail is just not going to do anything because unless it's Jim, it's not going to do anything. And I can double click on that pass node ID and it will take me right to that first question that I created, the yes/no question. Are you responsible? And this is the very first question in the set. Now you'll notice that the Jim, checking for Jim, that's a context awareness thing, so that's using a condition with an expression, and you can see that in action. Now we're going to choose our decision node as our pass node, and then we can double click that and jump to our decision node there. And you can see that the condition for that is last yes/no was yes, which is basically the last question that was asked. Was it a yes or no? If it was yes, then we're going to go somewhere, and if it was no, we're going to go somewhere else. And so you can see in this list, we can choose our number 3. Do you use standard procedures? And 2, if it fails, and then it's going to ask about your responsibilities with respect to manufacturing. And so now we have a split based off of some simple logic there, and that is exactly what we want to see. So this node doesn't have any prompts or actions. It's really just evaluating the condition, and we can double click on the fail node ID and we'll take a look at that one first. So you can see this one we created already. It just does the true action, which means that it will do the prompts and actions, and it has an input box to collect some stuff. And of course it's only a true outcome, and so we can put a step in the pass node and then double click on that, and that takes us to question 3. And that's what we would like to see for the no branch on the question 1 decision. And of course, what can we do now? Well, we can test it out. So let's open that shift form and we'll type in Jim as our worker and we'll hit the survey. And since it is Jim, we are going to get our survey, and it'll say, are you responsible for the production? And you say yes, and it goes to question 3, and that's what we want to see. And if you click on it again and go to question no, then it asks for some responsibilities. So please specify your role and responsibilities related to candy manufacturing. And so this is an open-ended response, and that's what we want to see there. We can go OK, and it goes to question 3, which is what we wanted to see there. We can click yes or no there. Since we haven't filled in any further nodes, it just ends, and that's where we are in our system here. So that's what we wanted to see there. We can continue on from here and we can continue building. So that is our second node. We'll scroll forward to our second node and we click go to start, and that takes us to the starting node for this set, which is the Candy Supervisor Survey. So from there we can do lots of things from here. So we can scroll forward through it. We can go to the decision. We can scroll forward to question number 3. Or we can jump forward to question number 3 and we can start building, or you can just start building more nodes, which is what we're going to do in a moment here. But as you can see, we can navigate through our tree by double clicking on the pass or fail nodes, and those take us through the logic that we've created. Whenever we want, we can go back to start just by clicking start, and from here we can pick up the pace a little bit. And so we've got our third node there. And let's just click a new node. We're going to add another node. And you can see by looking at this sheet here that the next questions, the next 3 or 4 questions are actually very similar to the one that was created, the very first one. And so we've got a bunch of questions there, but they act in kind of the same way. And so we're going to go ahead and just fill this in a little bit more quickly here. So question 4, what stops you? That one is going to be a true condition because we are just going to evaluate the true branch, just like we did for the previous one. We'll grab that input box there and we'll put in barriers as our caption, and then we'll paste in that prompt text there. and then we'll add another node. And what's that? The number 5 there. So we'll grab that. We'll copy and paste that one. Copy that, and we're going to paste that into our node here after we make it. So that's going to be node number 5. That's going to be quality control. And for quality control, we are going to use the same style of question. So it's just going to be a true, and then we're going to have a decision node for this case. Like I said, you can actually mix up or condense some of these into single nodes, but we're going to use separate nodes for today. And so we got a yes, no, and we'll paste that prompt text in there. That is question 5. And then what do we do from there? Well, we need a decision node once again, and so we're going to do that too. Let's call this one 3D yes, Q3 yes, no check, and then we'll do the condition as a last answer was yes, and that will help us to move on, and then we can of course choose where we want to go. Now you can see those nodes we put in aren't there until we click our refresh lists, but now they are in there, and so we can go ahead, we can choose the quality control check for the pass. So if question 3 passes, it goes directly to the quality control question, but if it fails, it goes to question 4 to collect some more information. And that is exactly what we want to see there. So we can go ahead and navigate back through that. So we still need to wire up a few things. So we've got our question 3. So now we can go back to question 3 and we can say, hey, where does that go? We'll refresh it and we'll see that 3D pass in there. So we know that this is only going to go to that pass node because we've got a true condition in there. And we can navigate right through this right to the end to question 4. And of course question 4 is only a true condition, so it's just going to blast right through there to question 5. And that's all we really need to see for this little group of questions. So from there, if you want, you can navigate around. You can go back and forward all the way through if you want. You can scroll up to the double click and go to the end. You can check your branches to make sure that they have all of the right passes in there. And we are at question 5, which is a yes, no. That's exactly where we want to be, except now we're going to sort of turn it up a little bit because the next few questions are the same type as the original. So there we go. Question 5, if it's a yes, it goes to question 7. Otherwise, it goes to question 6. And question 6 is an open-ended question there. So we could grab that text there and we can minimize that and add a new node just like we did previously, and we'll create a name. Now this was the challenges in accepting. Okay, so we'll put in challenges implementing, and then we'll set that to true because we're going to use the same pattern that we used on the previous one. This is a free text one, or a open text one, so it's going to be an input box with that question in it. And then question 7, we'll create that node as well. So we'll add a new node there, and we can type in the name of our node. Now 7 was our specific protocols. There we go. So now then we can do equipment maintenance protocols. There we go. And that's also going to be a true, just like we did for the previous ones. And we'll do a 1, and then the protocols for the caption. We'll paste in that text for the prompt text, and that is good to go. And from there we'll click another new node and we'll type in 5D for our decision node for question 5, which is a yes no check. Once again, we'll use that last answer was yes, and we can refresh our list so we can grab our outcomes here. There we go. Question 7 for the pass and question 6 for the fail, and then we can go back and we need to make sure that question 5 actually goes to the right location here. So let's check that out. So question 5 has nothing for pass or fail in it right now, and we're going to refresh that so we can choose the new decision node. Question 5 has no fail node because it's only a true outcome. And so you can see we're kind of navigating through as we go here, and you'll get very used to it. And once you do, you can start building really amazing networks that can do all kinds of things. And of course, you can refine this form here and make it much bigger and have a lot more sort of visual aspects to it. This is one that we built very quickly in a previous episode. There's question 8, so we can do the same thing with question 8. We'll call that one impact, what was it, specific protocols, the impact. Okay, so there we go. We'll grab that. That's a true as well. So we're making very simple nodes using the true condition, and we can use an input. This is going to be one of those give us more information questions. We'll paste in the prompt text just like we did before. And let's go check out our sheet here. So question 7 was the specific protocols, and if yes, it goes to number 9, and if no, it goes to number 8. So let's grab number 9 first. We'll grab that one, and we'll hit new on our nodes there, and we'll grab number 9. Now this was implementing safety measures. So we'll do a safety measures check. We'll set that to true. And then this one's going to be a yes, no. And we'll go number 1, and we'll go safety measures. We can paste in the text from the text file there that was generated. And we now have our question number 9 set up. And that is good to go. We'll create another new node. And just like the pattern of the starting questions, this is going to have a yes/no check attached to it, which will be on question 7. So we'll create that 7D yes/no check, and we'll be using that last answer was yes, which could be true or false. And so for the pass node, we are going to grab question 9, and for the fail, we'll get question 8. So that decision node has a pass and a fail attached to it, and we can back up through the ones we've just created if we want, and we can go to question 7, and we'll refresh that list. And now we're going to say that question 7 goes directly to its decision node, and if we double click to navigate to that one, we can go to the decision node, and we can go all the way to the pass or fail there. And if we choose the fail side, it is a true, and we're going to divert it back into the main question after we've collected information there, and that's what we want to see for that one. So then we've got question 9. Have you implemented any safety measures for the production team? If yes, go to question 11. If no, go to question 10. And so we can go ahead. I'll grab that question 10 there. And we can create that one first, I guess. So we'll do 10, that'll be safety measures. I can't type here today, apparently. And we'll set that to true. And we'll grab that input box with the question in it, what obstacles prevented you. And you can do a free text in there, open-ended question. And then question 11 is going to be that's going to be the do you analyze your data, and that's going to be the next one after this is all done. So this is kind of the last question in this series. This, I guess it's like 3 or 4 questions. So the way that this survey rolled out is it had a very similar design for many of the questions. There are some different ones at the end here, but again, we'll do the yes/no check after number 9 there. Same idea, refresh our list. If it passes, then go to the next question. If it fails, go collect more information on question 10. And so we can do the same thing. And so we'll refresh that. We'll go back to question 9 because we have to now make sure that it goes to the pass or the yes/no check for question 9, which is 9D. And so there we go. We can navigate around. We'll also set the pass node for the fail branch. So we want to make sure that it goes back to the main questioning after it goes and collects more information. And so that's the same pattern we're doing over and over again. And so that's just this particular survey. Surveys all have different patterns, and so in this particular survey, that's the pattern that we're seeing as the dominant one. So we can do the same thing. We've got question 12, which is about analysis, and question 12 is the challenges related to that, and that is going to be a true, just like the other sets that we had. So very similar to what we had before in the previous 3 sets of 3 questions. Again, this is an input box, so it's going to be open-ended. What were your challenges? So that's question 12, and then question 13 is going to be the destination. That's the main, I guess you'd call it the main branch of this particular set of nodes, and it is a yes/no with the prompt order 1. It's going to be about training and training programs, and have you introduced training programs for the staff. And just for good measure, I'm going to add another one just to show you guys. You can add a bunch of things if you need to collect information. So I'm going to add an open-ended please elaborate on there with an input box that isn't in the design of our ChatGPT generated survey, that is, not the design of our program. And then we can go ahead. Next, we're going to make another node, and we'll call this one, I called this 9D. We're going to change that in a minute. We're going to fix that to 11D. But again, it's going to use that last answer was yes. If it is yes, it will go to the pass node of 13. If it fails, it'll go to the fail node of 12. And that is what we want to see there. So if I scroll back here, let's see, 9. So I've got the pass node is going through there. I'm going to scroll right to the end of my questions. I misnamed that one to 90. It should be 11D. That'll make it a little easier. And then let's go and take a look at our list. I'll refresh that, and we can go ahead and hit 11D for the decision node. And if we go to 11D, it's got the right nodes in there. Again, we can go back to question 12. We need to make sure that that offshoot branch to gather information returns back to the main line of questioning. So question 12 will go to question 13, just like it does in the survey that you saw there that was generated. And then I think we are good to go. So the next ones are kind of similar to what we've been seeing. And then there's some ones that are a little bit different. So here we go. We got question 13. If it is a no, it goes to 14, and that is an open-ended question. And if it's a yes, it jumps to 15. That's exactly like what we've been seeing so far. And so let's go ahead and create that question 14, staff training barriers. Are there any barriers to training programs? And so there we go, training barriers. We'll set that as a true in the same pattern as our other ones. And we'll set that as an input box. We're going to collect extra information in case it is a, they say no to the question in 13. And then in 15, that's going to be the next one. That's also going to be open-ended. So now we're sort of ending off with 2 open-ended questions and then a yes-no question. And the yes-no question on the very end has a loop back to question 4 to allow them to go back and do some additional rephrasing or to re-answer some questions if they answer that question a certain way. So there we go. So 15 is about feedback. How do you handle feedback? And it's going to be a true. And that one is a yes-no. And it's going to be a feedback question. There we go. We can paste in how do you address feedback. Oh, that's actually an input box. I think we're going to end up changing that one. And then we can check that. Next, of course, we are going to have a decision node just like we had for the other ones. This will be 13D for decision, and we'll say yes, no, check. You guys can make your own numbering or naming schemes for yours. And this is a very simple example of how to do this, but Again, we'll choose the last answer was yes. If it's a pass, it goes to feedback. If it's a fail, it goes to staff training. And that's all we need for that node. So we can scroll back here, and we can go back to 13 now because we are able to put that into our list. We'll refresh that list, and then now we can choose 13 decision. That's where it's going to go. There's no fail node on that one. We can navigate through at that point, and we do want to go back to our fail node to make sure that it goes back to the main questioning after to question 15, and that is exactly what we want to see there. So there we go. That is the questions up until the last one here. Let's see, have you attempted to address any of the challenges mentioned before? And if it's a yes, ChatGPT wants to send the user back to question 4. That's okay. We're just doing demonstration today. And if it's no, then that's it. That's the end of the survey. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll do 16 is the have you addressed concerns? It's a yes, no, and we'll put in the caption there, concerns addressed, and we can paste that in just like we did before. And that is the node for 16. At that point, we need to create another node, and that's going to be another decision node. So that'll be 16D. And so 16 for decision, that'll be another yes no check. Last answer was yes. And in this case, we are sending the user back to question 4, which is something that is going to happen. And we could have other branches or things like that. But in this case, it goes to question 4. If it's a fail, it doesn't go anywhere. That's the end of the survey. And we are good to go. So we can go ahead and go back to our question 16. We need to make sure that we put the pass node in there. Now that we have it, we have to grab that 16D there. That's the yes no check. That is the yes no node. So now when it goes to 16, if you click yes, it's going to send you back up into the back further in the survey and back to number 4, as you can see there. And if no, that's the end of the survey. And so we're pretty much done there. We are going to go back here and let's just double check and make sure these are okay. I'm just scrolling through the nodes here, double click all the way through. I can go back up to 7ID. That looks okay there. And we can scroll forward, and it looks like the answers are pretty good there. So we want to make sure on that question 15, on the feedback question, that it goes to question 16. That's going to be redirecting back onto the main node, just like we said. Let's go and fix that question 15 like we said before. The feedback question is actually not a yes no, that is an input box, and we can change it very simply by selecting it in the drop down. How easy is that, right? Those are the only two. Yes, no, and input box are just what we have right now, but we're going to be adding selection lists and all kinds of other stuff, which is going to be awesome. So now we got our input box there, and it redirects back to the main branch. If I go back up through the tree here, back to 13, everything looks good. 13 says, if yes, go to 15. If no, go to 14. 14's open-ended. 15's open-ended. And then 16 is the main sort of question, yes, no question. It's the final question. And so if I go back to 13, that looks pretty good. I can double click on 13, the pass, and it goes to the 13D. And if that one passes, it goes to 15, which goes to 16, because those are in order and they are both open-ended questions, so that's different from our main pattern there. And 14 is going to go directly to 16, and that looks like what we want to see there. So we can go back up. So now we've got our decisions in there, and that is what we want to see there. So 16, it basically asks the question, if you say yes, you're going back up into the main questioning, and if it's a no, that's the end of the survey. So you can see that setting up the questions is a bit of going back and forth through the question set. You can navigate through the nodes using the navigators there, the colored controls, or the go back to, or you can go right to the start and navigate through. And you can also just use the form itself to go back, because you know the order that you created them in. And so that makes it very nice and easy to use. So let's go test this out. Context awareness. Susan is not the one that receives this survey, but Jim is the one that receives it. Let's test this out. Awesome. So there's our starting question. Supervisor check. We'll say yes. And then we'll say, do you follow standardized production? We'll say no. And that's going to ask us what factors influence deviations from the standard production procedures. And we can type in an answer for that. And we can say, sometimes I produce the purple fizzers. And and that is the thing, if you remember from previous episodes, that was something that Jim was associated with. And we can go okay, and that's going to take us back to the main line of questioning, which is number 5. We can say no to that one too, and it'll ask for some more information. What challenges do you face in implementing quality control during production? And you can see we are using the default input box here. Stay tuned for when we start creating our own custom pop-ups for lists and things. And so next one, we hit okay on that. We go 7. We're going to say yes to 7. That jumps to question 9. Have you implemented any safety measures? If we say no, then it does go to question 10. So we're seeing some skip patterns as we answer the questions. There are skip patterns, which is something that is really nice to use. We can say team is taking measures. We go, do you track and analyze data for process improvement? If we say yes, then it skips to question 13. Have you introduced any training programs? We can say yes to that one. This is the extra input box that I put on there, or the extra data collection saying please elaborate on that question. So we put 2 prompts in one. This is sort of just demonstrating that you can collect 10 prompts or 100 prompts if you want on one question, and then we can keep going. And so the next one is also an open-ended. It says what barriers hinder the implementation of training programs for the production staff, and then we get another open-ended one after that saying how do you address and handle feedback or suggestion from production line workers, which is exactly what we want to see there. So the user can go ahead and put in some data. Stay tuned for an episode where we check for a particular word in that outcome, and it has a yes no attached to it. Next one is 16. Have you attempted to address any of the challenges mentioned before? If we say no, that's the end of the survey. We have successfully created a full-on survey with skip patterns and loopback logic in it, and there are all of our answers. If I scroll to the end there and double click there, we'll get a view of the times and everything. So you can get all of the information you need. You can join this table to the actual prompts to see what the user answers were, and you can calculate times and all kinds of stuff. And so that is really cool. That's what we want to see there. That is how to make a simple survey using ADI. Interested in more topics like these? Make sure to check out my Patreon. The link is in the description.